Hi, folks. James here, and welcome to the Spyro Circle. This week I spoke to Maya Natan, the CEO of Keshet. Keshet's an NGO that helps individuals and corporations with their philanthropic needs. So, what does that mean? It means that they take things like cash or assets or stocks and they assign it in a way that gives most value to those who need it. It's been around for about 5 years now, and in 2024 alone, Keshet rate has 880 million shekels under management. It's about $270 million. It's helped 155 donors grant 420 million shekels to more than 1,100 organizations. And that was just last year alone. And it's quite extraordinary to think what an organization like Keshet does in a country like Israel. So it's been around for 5 years, but in those 5 years, Israel's had nothing short of a pandemic, judicial crisis, and war at its fingertips. So you can see how its challenges are kind of just constant. So today I spoke with Maya about how philanthropy changes over time, how we can best get involved with helping our civil societies, and also how it's changed after October 7, and how Israelis are thinking differently about what to do with their time, their money, and their assistance. I really hope you enjoy. I'd also like to note that this episode was the first time I was using a different microphone, and you are definitely going to hear it. I do apologize. My film editor teacher always used to say that your audience will forgive bad video, but they won't forgive bad audio. I really hope that isn't the case, and I promise you the next episode will be better. Thank you. Maya, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for hosting me.
Thank you. I wanted to better understand what you folks do and to outline for the viewers or the listeners out there a bit about your journey, your extensive journey and your background that led to where we are today. So, Maya, you've spent more than 2 decades in philanthropy. Talk me through what drew you into the world initially.
So I think I first realized that I'm interested in this world actually when I spent time in the US in the Jewish community. I spent 3 years, well, a few different types of, I will call them jobs as a younger person, working for summer camps and trips to Israel and this whole Israel diaspora relations world. But then when I was 26, I went to the United States to be a shlicha, which means an emissary, but I'm not really loving this word, but I had the opportunity to work for the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington in Washington, D.C., and working with philanthropists who were very eager to learn about Israel, to find things that they think is meaningful for them, giving them advice, working with the federation to find that connection, really sort of brought me to think about the value of giving away money and giving away money that is smart or that is effective or that makes a difference. Um, Plus the fact that it was a very it sort of combined two things that I really appreciate, which one is I appreciate financial wisdom, but I also appreciate heart and values and people that do things that makes them feel happy and that makes them feel meaningful. So that combination, I think, only exists in philanthropy because the for-profit world offers you a lot of bottom lines, but not necessarily the heart and soul that goes along with it. So when I came back to Israel, and after I also spent a year in London, and I also realized that there's also different types of donors and also different types of relationships within this world. But during my time in the States and also in the UK, I've realized that there's a lot of infrastructure that exists elsewhere to support philanthropy. And when I came back to Israel, I had the opportunity to start the Jewish Funders Network in Israel, which is a network of private philanthropists and foundations um, who engage in their giving in a very thorough way, which means they study about the fields that they give in, because most of their giving is pretty large and it's ongoing. It's not a one-time thing. They also think that they want to interact with each other because they want to learn from others, and also they want to create collaborations that makes their impact grow. Um, Working to build a philanthropic sector in Israel and also building a community makes me realize, or made me realize, that there's a lot missing in terms of infrastructure. It repeated again, just like I felt when I came back from the UK.
That was what I was going to ask. When you returned to Israel, what was it that you felt Israel was lacking compared to your experience in the States or England or anywhere else? What was the piece that was missing for you?
So many people think that Israelis are actually not very philanthropic, or that we don't have a culture of giving. It's not true at all. I think that what we have in Israel is a different kind of philanthropy, because our state, or our country, more so than anywhere else in the world, have or was established as a welfare state, which means that you pay high taxes and the government takes care of most of your social needs. However, throughout the time, or as Israel grew during the years, mostly around the 80s, our economic situation changed, and also the government changed the way that we work. And a lot of the social services that you and I receive are actually being provided by NGOs. So our infrastructure changed. And I think that what we have not yet transitioned into is that most of the legal and the tax structure that goes along with supporting the social sector, and also giving incentives to people to give and to be involved, are not there, because we never needed them. The country was always doing it on their own. Even today, 53% of the income coming to NGOs comes from the government of Israel. So what I've noticed is that we're not lacking the willingness or the excitement or the culture that supports it. We're lacking the infrastructure that allows people to do it easy, fast, effectively. And so it was a real debate for me whether or not I want to start dealing with infrastructure. It's not easy. It's not like a thing you do and you can develop it. It has a lot of legal issues that are tied to it. You have to make sure that compliance and that the tax authority is on the same page as you are, that you are, just very, very precise in how you develop the mechanism. Otherwise, it really can be trouble. So for me to move from helping or supporting the decision making of philanthropists and creating a community and creating collaboration, which is a more soft area, into the hardcore, infrastructure building, that was a big decision for me career-wise. But I just felt people will continue to say that Israelis don't give if we don't do something about it. So that's what led to setting up Keshet.
It's so interesting that that's the perceived stereotype, or one of the perceived stereotypes in that. When anyone knows on the street here, anyone living here knows
Yeah,
that's just not the case, and so
it's not the case.
it's not the case at all. I want to dive deeper into what you folks do at Keshet specifically. So those who may not be
Sure.
aware, it's a donor advised fund. Okay. So
Yes.
not everyone is familiar with some of the infrastructure that you've laid out and some of the challenges there that you said. To those who aren't in the know, what is that specifically, and how does that differ from other kinds of funds? Just talk to me a bit about that infrastructure.
So donor advised fund all over the world are a financial instrument It's an NGO. In Israel, we are a non-for-profit company. Um, in Israel, we also received a Section 46, which means that the government recognized that we can give tax exempt for the people who donate to us. So any individual or company or a group of people can decide that they want to start being philanthropic in a more constructive and ongoing way, and they want to make sure that their money is being managed properly. So what they do is they donate an asset, any kind of asset, which is also something that was lacking in Israel. You can donate cash or shares or buildings or art. And once you give that asset to Keshet as a donation, you legally are separating yourself from it, but you receive the full tax benefit that goes along with that property or with that asset. So, for example, when you donate cash, you will receive 35% as credit from the tax authority because we are a recognized nonprofit. If you donate shares, you will receive the 35% back, but you don't pay uh, the capital gains tax, which is, if you think about it, it's a real incentive for people who do, anyone who goes through an exit or an IPO, anyone who is going through a secondary deal, anyone who sells their private company to someone else can go through that process of donating shares. And for them, this is the best, I think, asset that they can donate. Before Keshet existed, it was not possible to do. Or the number of NGOs in Israel who know how to deal with these kinds of donations are very small.
So, talk,
So
so
Keshet
can we talk a bit about that? So, how do you balance what people are donating, whether it's cash or stock or building or any of the assets you said, with the actual on the ground needs of the people that are receiving that? What does Keshet do to bridge that?
ideally, we ask the donors after they donate to us to choose the NGOs that they feel are closest to their heart and to their values, and to recommend the grants that they want to make to us. So that is why we are advised by them. This is where the name comes from, Donor Advised Fund. So we are advised by the donors as to where they want their philanthropy to go. Again, philanthropy is a very personal thing, and it needs to be embedded in values. Otherwise, it means nothing. If you just throw away money on different NGOs without knowing what you're trying to do, it means nothing, and usually people stop. So we encourage them, one, to be involved, two, to ask smart questions before they start giving, so they don't end up just doing the same as somebody else already did. To we also tell them that we will make sure that the NGO that they choose, with our due diligence process, we will make sure that they are okay and that they do their job and that they are that what they promise the donor that they will do with their money, it will happen. However, they need to be choosing at what timing they want to give the grants and to which NGOs. Once they do that, they do it on our portal. It's really easy, and it's really sort of, the end user, sort of our donor, really feels that it's painless. Like they just need to do what makes them happy, what makes them feel meaningful. Like I said, it's the hard thing. We will make sure that not only do we manage their funds properly while we have them, we also make sure that when they make a donation, it's it's done right. So they're not, we've found along the way, you have to make sure that you protect the donors. Sometimes also the donor doesn't want to be out there. Like they want to give anonymously because it's about the giving, not about them. So they can also do that through Keshet. And while they feel that it's very meaningful for them, they're not sort of to the public eye, they're not out there. They're not going to be asked for donations. They can choose the ones that they want to give instead of having people sort of come to them constantly. So it makes the whole giving experience much better.
Can you name some of the NGOs or some of the causes that you're helping?
Oh my God. It's funny you ask because we gave, since Keshet was established 5 years ago, there was a billion, 200 million shekels donated to Keshet, and we gave out 680 million shekels in 5 years to more than 2,000 NGOs.
I'm not going
So
to
we
ask you to
don't,
name them,
yes, exactly.
but
So
that's an
I
amazing
don't, I usually,
accomplishment. Can you tell me a bit about sectors or areas or people like?
Sure. Look, I have to admit, we started Keshet in 2020 during the first lockdown of COVID. There were 2 years of COVID, 1 year of protests, and 2 years of war. So basically, we are in an emergency situation since day one. Having said that, and that is why we kind of feel like we're not living in the real world in terms of content, because a lot of what we've done is emergency grant making. So we've given a lot to, anywhere from milunikim to wellness to a whole range of things that evolved in the last 2 years, but also beforehand, mental rehabilitation, the rehabilitation of the North and the South, any kind of institution in Israel that deals with populations at risk. So really a lot of different, and on the same time, we also do arts and culture and people with disabilities, like the whole gamut of what exists in the world of nonprofits. And as you know, I don't know if you know that, but almost in every country, the giving to NGOs really resembles the Maslow ladder. So it starts, it's the most money goes to very basic needs of food and welfare and health and that kind of giving. Then it goes up a level in terms of needs of the just like the Maslow ladder. It goes up to education, um, and religion and sort of people's lives, and then it goes up to things that are more sort of, it's not nice to have. It's just a matter of how much how many people actually deal with it. So
So I was going to say,
arts and culture,
do you steer that ladder, or is that just kind of where the cookies crumble?
it's almost like an organic dissemination of fun.
Right.
That's what I see in front. If you ask me, what do people give to? That's what they give to. But it's very interesting because if you look in the United States and if you look in the UK and in Canada, you see the same division. Because obviously, usually philanthropy wants to secure life and make sure that we take care of the vulnerable. And then they want to develop their aspirations and hopes and dreams.
There's also a human
So,
nature aspect towards people giving
yes,
to things that emotionally resonate with them or things that attach themselves
yes,
to experiences. So that's a global feeling, I suppose.
totally,
I
totally.
want to
Absolutely.
touch on something quickly that you mentioned before, which was that people have a misconception about Israelis giving. Um, are there any misconceptions Israelis have, or the Israeli culture has, towards giving or philanthropic causes or anything like that? Are there any? I'm going to flip the question. I'm going to flip the statement on its head.
Yes,
Are there any things
yes.
that is there anything that we or they need to know um, to help you and help the NGOs and improve the
So
process?
the first misconception which I want to kill is the statement, I don't give to overhead.
Explain that.
It's people seem to think that they only want to give money that goes directly to the end user. However, if the organization that is responsible to deploy that money is not professional enough, they only work with volunteers, they don't have a single staff person, you can be sure that your money will not be used properly. So the idea that you're not supporting the well-being of the organization that is supposed to be doing what you want to support is nonsense. in the business world, you will never invest in an organization or in a company that doesn't have employees. So I think what donors need to understand is that the third sector has very professional layer of people that need to be paid. However, the right thing to do is not to say, I don't support overhead. The right thing to do is to say, I want to see that your overhead is in proportion to what you're doing and to the financial scope of your work. So it doesn't
Do
seem
you help? Do
like,
you help with that? Do you help with providing the
yes,
donors with the breakdowns of the overhead?
definitely, absolutely. We look at the organizations. As part of our due diligence is to look at the organization's budget and also financial report, and to say to the donor, look, we checked it. We think it's appropriate. We didn't see anything that was wrong. You should give them money. It's okay. And it's okay to also say that in a part of the grant that you give an organization will go to cover their salaries because it's the right thing to do, because that's how you do good philanthropy, and that's how you make sure that the cause that you want to promote is actually being promoted by excellent people and not being sort of haphazard in the way that
From a
it's being done.
storytelling point of view, you could sell it as a tax, right? Like consider the salaries for the employees that work at these places as the tax that you need to pay to make sure that the cause, the overall cause, is.
Because the word tax has a
No,
negative
but I was tying it
negative
back. But I was tying it back
implication.
to Israel's history of, as you were saying, the welfare state and the high tax. You know, we could.
No, but it's just, I think it's just a matter of understanding that what you're trying to promote in our world must be done in a very professional way. Otherwise, it's a waste of your money. So basically, don't say zero overhead because it means that you want to throw away your money, and it's just not very good judgment. So that's one. The other one that I think is important to recognize is that people just don't know that they're philanthropic, that they can do philanthropy with other assets. So they constantly stick to cash, which is not a very smart thing to do. And I really want to urge people to look at their assets, to tell their family office, to tell their accountant, let's look at the wealth management. Let's look at philanthropy as one element that supports other elements. So that means that when you look at how much you invested in private equity and how much you have in shares and in stocks and how much you have in bonds, and one of the items that needs to be plugged in as a tax related issue should be the issue of philanthropy. And it's not a part of the conversation right now. So I think it's a mistake. I think people should change it and should demand from their advisors to be told what is the effect or what can they do at the end of each year to maximize their wealth structure.
I suppose that's a difficult. It's difficult to. It's difficult to explain that tangibly because I mean to use the basic, a 100 shekel note, let's say, it's very easy to understand that I'm giving this to Maya and Maya is going to give this to someone else and that's my. So when you incorporate assets, whatever they may be, into that, it all becomes a bit more difficult to explain. I mean,
But that's why I say to almost, anyone who works in high tech, anyone who works in finance, anyone who works in the out of the vehicle industry, anyone who has years where their income surges, it's not their job to decide on the how much. They just need to know or to decide that they want to ask that question. And so when they bring it to their advisor, usually people don't make those decisions on their own. There is an advisor, whether an accountant or a lawyer or a family office, that gives them that service. But it needs to be a part of the conversation. That's what I'm saying. Especially at this time of year when people make decisions about their wealth, looking backwards, how much tax I need to pay, how much gain did I have, just plug it in as part of your conversation about your wealth. It's true that it's not for every person on the street. But Keshet also is not for every person on the street. We start from 50,000 shekels a year. If you don't give that, if you don't have the money to be able to give that, then Keshet is not for you. However, there are many other mechanisms that allow people, to do small donations. We call it micro
Do you
donations.
have a bracket or an access point for people in those micro donation
So we
areas?
usually don't deal with that, but if people ask us, we defer them. There are 3 different organizations in Israel who do that. But I think micro donations are different in the way that when we do our grant making, we choose 1 or 2 NGOs and we just give them the money that we think that we can give them. When it goes to sort of higher amounts of money, usually you don't want to give it all at once, which is why you want to use Keshet. It's not 2,000 shekels. It's 50,000, 100,000, a million shekels. So you want to plan. You want to maybe do a 3 to 5 year grant, not a one-time, one-off.
Especially if it's assets. So there's a question of liquidity and there's a question of how these things.
Exactly. And when you sell them and what's the right timing, timing is everything in this world. And so you want to plan it and you want to make sure that you give the right asset at the right time. And then you're not stressed by it as to who to give it to. So you can make a decision that you want to be in the mental health spectrum and you want to choose a portfolio of NGOs that will help what you think is a very real need in the state of Israel right now. And you don't want to do it, just give them one grant and disappear. You want to do this for the next 5 years and you want to do it by, benchmarks. You don't want to just pour all the money. If you have 1 million shekels, you don't want to give it all at once. So by granting the 1 million shekels to Keshet, we not only allow you to choose which NGOs you want to give to and what, when, and how much, we also, while we keep the money, we can reinvest it, and then any profit that you have from the investment will go directly to your philanthropic account with us. Or we can keep it in a short deposit. Any interest from that short deposit will go back to your philanthropic account with us. So all around 360, it's a very effective thing to do because you don't have to do the work, but you still get the best product in the philanthropic sector if you are at that level of giving.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I want to touch on something you said. You mentioned it earlier, and you said just now it's about the right timing. You said you've been around for 5 years, and then you outlined some of the things that you've dealt with in the last 5 years: pandemic, judicial reform protests, and war, to name a few. I can't imagine what would be the next thing.
Yes, I hope that we will have just the most boring year ever.
Boring is good. I was always told.
But you know that we have another year of election that I'm sure will be fantastic.
I was always told growing up, boring is good. You want boring, at least for a while.
Yes.
So tell me, how has some of that? I mean, and you've had a few evolutions of the kind of context in which you operate, but let's just take the most recent one. Post October 7, in this post-wartime era that Israel was in and still is in some ways. How did that change for you? What did that look like? Did people's behavior change? Did their attitudes change? Tell me a bit about how this experience changed philanthropy in Israel, if at all.
So first of all, I think that after October 7th, there was no doubt that the civic sector of Israel, the people of Israel, actually sort of held the backbone of the country. Everything that was done post October 7th for the first 6 months were done by individuals who were supported by organizations, NGOs in Israel, who basically gave or performed all of the different activities that the country needed, because the country was lost and the government was lost it was a whole period when people really sort of stepped up. And I feel that philanthropy understood the moment, understood the time that they need to step up, not only in Israel, but also Jews everywhere. The amounts of money that we sort of absorbed and disseminated were crazy. Never in my history of 20 years working in this field, I've never seen such a wild flow of cash. Um, I have to say that sometimes during a war, during any kind of an emergency, not everything is the most thoughtful giving. Um, to name a few, I felt like people really are trying to solve real issues that are problematic, like soldiers not having vests. However, this is not the role of philanthropy. And when we do it, we usually are not great at it. So we cannot buy vests for the army if the vests are not at code, or if we buy a helmet and the helmet is not at code and a soldier will die because of it. It's not a good idea. So but people feel like they need to do something, like they need to save or help or be there for everything that Israel needs. I think that sometimes during the war, it's best to ask people who work in that field how to sort of direct the funds.
So, I want to get on that because
Yeah.
it was interesting points about, and I remember I was here on the ground during those early days, and I was reporting, at least in the tech space, all of these NGOs coming together, all of these donation fund.
And you saw the tech space, you saw the tech, the entrepreneurs, the VCs, they were
100%.
all sort of, they build tremendous things. They've done tremendous,
100%.
really
So
work.
I want to ask about the network or the islands between the philanthropic world, the public sector world, and then the private sector world. So what I was seeing was Startup Nation rising to that challenge, and what you saw with the NGOs kicking themselves into
Yes.
it. What can you tell me about the way that the pillars work together, if at all? I mean, it's famously difficult to get the private sector and the public sector to collaborate on anything, let alone
Yes.
philanthropic causes, let alone in wartime. What did that look like exactly?
I think that the private sector and the civic sector were more aligned. There was a problem with the government throughout the first, I think, 6 months. Justifiably so. I think that they were caught, a bit in a situation that they needed to reorganize. There were a lot of initiatives. I think that the Startup Nation also was able to bring some of the expertise that these young folks in the high tech have, not just young, but everyone who works there, both the entrepreneurial spirit, their know-how, and also tools that they brought tools from their technological skills.
And their army backgrounds, right, as well.
Yes.
Everyone came from the army as well, so there's this loop.
Right, and not to mention the fact that everyone was at Miluim, of course. But also those who were on the civic end and were collaborating with NGOs, Amutot, and organizations in Israel. I think that they brought in the spirit of can do. Let's solve problems and not wait for someone to solve it for us. It's very Israeli, by the way. I think it's a very sort of like push forward. Like let's find the way to help. Let's find the way to solve problems. We're not going to wait until the government will do it for us. We're just going to get organized. So you saw entities getting organized by collaborating with each other and with NGOs in the field, both by using their people. So companies were telling individuals that work for them, you can go and volunteer and it will count as a workday. And that was it was a major thing. And so by collaborating from the manpower perspective, technology, and being able to be in the same space as the NGOs who they already know the work on the ground, it was a good combination. later on, I think only sort of well into the war, it was like maybe a year into the war, there was the discussion between philanthropy and government and the business sector to organize the ongoing work in a more structured way. So we're not stepping into each other's fields, we're not stepping on each other's toes, and to try and go back to what every sector does best. Because I think that it's true that in a time of emergency, you want to do as much as you can, but sometimes you don't have an added value in, in, in a certain field. So it will only last until you need to go back to what you do best.
You're
And
reminding
I
me
think that,
when I was. You're reminding me of when I went to cook for soldiers who were in Miluim in the early days of the war, and no one is worse in a kitchen than I am.
yeah,
And so I was really. I turned up. I went to help. I went to do all I could. And they said, "What do you do for work?" I said, "Well, I'm a writer." They said, "You know what? Write notes on the boxes. Don't get out of the
yeah, get
don't
out of the
bother
kitchen.
us here. You write that." So I hope there were a couple of hundred soldiers in the early days of the war that were reading my notes that I wrote, handwritten notes, all of them. So you're right about like you use what
Yes,
you can because you can be a hindrance otherwise.
exactly. And also, it could do damage. I mean, at first, for example, I'll give you the mental support space. It's okay to give sessions voluntarily to people, either to like, I don't know, retreats for the Nova survivors or anyone else who really experienced post-trauma or trauma in a very, very serious way. But it's a profession and people need to know what they're doing. And it's not a one-off. You can't just come and speak to a person for an hour and it will go away. It needs to be a process of healing. So organizations need to be excellent at it or not do it at all. So at first it was very organic. It sort of came from the people that wanted to do something. But more and more during the last year, we saw initiatives being sort of transitioning into something more ongoing, more professional, more embedded within an organization that this is their profession. And I think that this is something that is it's natural, so the willingness to help and the wanting to be there and so on. But it is true that, like you said, if you don't belong in the kitchen, don't be there.
The
Go do something that you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but also that's another thing. It's delegation as well. And it's probably what you folks are doing because it's helping, like putting the best foot forward, whatever it is,
Yes.
wherever it may be. What does the we're running out of time, I'm afraid, but I do have a few
Yes.
questions just to sum up the where we are
Sure.
now and going forward. As you said, you're 5 years in, you've had a chaotic 5 years. Where do you see the next 5 or 10 years in Israeli philanthropic giving? Where do you see this ecosystem, this infrastructure? Where do you see it going?
First of all, Keshet is growing every year exponentially, not linear. So, which means that I'm hoping it will continue to grow. It needs to grow because I feel like, some people think that we are going to have world peace and a financial growth and everything will be at the color pink. And while wanting it to be true, I think we're still going to have a few challenging years ahead. So I think that people understood there was a realization of how important the third sector is to the state of Israel. And so I hope and I wish that it will continue to grow significantly so we can financially support the third sector at the challenges that it needs to face.
What are
Thank
some
you.
of the global trends out there that Israel needs to adopt for success?
So first of all, the transfer of wealth, the intergenerational transfer of wealth. People talk about a Buffett, and they talk about a whole, uh, I think, phenomena of how to give your children or transfer your wealth in a smart way. That's one. The second Mackenzie Scott is people talk about her a lot as changing sort of the state of mind of giving more with trust-based giving, it's called. We need to choose organizations we love, and we need to give them money to grow. So scale, scale, scale. I will say that as much as I can. And the third and last is that I think, like I said before, make it a part of our conversation. Be proud of what you do. Be proud of being a philanthropist. Make it a positive thing in your life.
Wonderful, thank you. You answered a few of my questions that I've got here, almost all of it. I'll leave you, I have two last questions for you. So the first one is, you've had a long career behind you that's led you to this moment. You've seen the zoom out. What advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who are starting out and want to either enter the world, probably on a smaller scale to start with, but then with that intention to grow? What advice would you give to the young generation, maybe the post-war, post-COVID generation of philanthropists?
First of all, I think that it's they need to understand that it is a trust game, and it's also not, things are not fixable just like that. They need patience. And I think that one of the things that we're all lacking, and it's getting worse by the minute, is that we're not patient enough. We get bored really fast. We don't have attention span. We don't listen. We don't learn. And if we learn, or we let somebody else do it, or let AI do it. I want them to listen, I want them to learn, and I want them to understand that social issues are not, they're complicated. So they need patience. And I also, having said that, I want them to bring the spirit of entrepreneurship and also an innovation into the third sector. The more we have it, the better it will be.
Yeah. Well, it's an exciting time, and the younger generations may not have the patience that you mentioned, but they certainly have the entrepreneurship and the innovation
Absolutely.
that's needed. I did say I had two questions. That was one of them. I end every episode with this last question. Maya, what is the best way to follow, connect, donate, throw all the information at me, and I'll make sure to put it underneath so everyone can follow and like along and subscribe?
It's really easy because you can get it. First of all, on our website, there's an info, and also connect with us. Just send us questions. We are always happy to help. Even if you're not yet at the level of giving that Keshet is requiring, we still can answer questions if needed. And just, be in touch. I think that you need to get to know us. I know it's a trust game. You need to trust that we know what we're doing. So we're here to answer anyone's questions at any time.
Maya, thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you, James. It was a pleasure talking to you.